Hey there, and welcome to this episode of Mum Got Strong, where we sit down with Sean, who's a coach inside of the FitBud Strength Movement Program, and a beautiful client, Rachel, who's gone through probably the most epic transformation that I've ever seen. So she's a mum who started out at roughly about 130 kilos. Now, she's actually managed to lose about 50 kilos of that weight, and she's gone on to be able to build this amazingly toned, fit, strong body. And not only that, she's been able to completely transform her life, her habits, and how she interacts with her kids and engages with her family as well. Now, her story is absolutely inspiring. So I'm not going to say too much. I want you to sit down and listen to this, because I can guarantee you that a lot of what Rachel talks about and a lot of what she says, you can probably relate to, being a mum, being busy and trying to fit a healthy lifestyle in around everything that you've got going on. So without much further ado, I'll go ahead and I'll share this interview with you. And I really, really encourage you to take on the words of wisdom that she gives, because she has so many golden nuggets of inspiration and wisdom to share that you can take away and that you can use and implement into your life as well. So I hope you enjoy. So I would love for you to just share what you would like to share in terms of, you know, where you were when you started, because I'm a bit like Sean. It's like that whole mental transformation. That's what I said to him, like who you were as a person before you started your journey, like would have to be completely different to who you are now. And, you know, just in terms of your lifestyle and your habits and what you do and what you believe and what you think about yourself and your abilities and what you can do. So I'd love to hear that side of it as well.
So I don't actually think I'm a different person, in the sense that I've not changed. It's more a case of I sort of believe in myself, and so let people see the person that I actually am. So I've always sort of been outgoing and bubbly and open and honest, but for a long period of time I sort of just hid myself away and I guess put myself last. And it sort of hit a massive peak when I had kids, and just, you know, like I wasn't a priority, and I thought by putting them as number one and myself as last, that was the absolute best thing, you know, for my family. And I think it was probably about 2 weeks after my second child was born, I started to realize that, you know, what I was doing was probably going to mean that my kids weren't going to have a mum for a long time. So I was sitting at around just under 130 kilos. And that's when I was like, do you know what, like this can't go on. Obviously, by not prioritizing myself, my kids are losing out. And they were, because even though I was putting them first, I kind of wasn't, in a sense. Like they were missing out on having a mum that could, you know, run around with them. I'd get breathless just doing anything, and I always felt like crap. Like I didn't feel like doing anything. I always felt miserable. So yeah, I basically, the way I found Sean was that my next door neighbour happened to be one of Sean's clients, and I saw her transformation, and I sort of thought, oh wow, like that would be really cool if I could do something like that. And of course, in the beginning, it was just, you know, I just wanted to lose a little bit of weight. I never imagined that I'd get this far, but the further I got into it and the more I started to learn, I was kind of hooked. And anybody that's sort of gotten into that sort of lifestyle knows, you know, when it's got a hold of you, that's it. Like it's a forever sort of thing. So like Sean sort of touched on before, he'd tell me something and I'd be like, yes, okay, interesting. And I'd go home and just learn all I could. And I was always like asking questions and trying to find out more. And just from my background in being in healthcare, and based around evidence-based practice and, you know, like always having that continual professional development, it just appealed to me, you know, the evidence-based fitness world. So good thing I found Sean. But I think, like I said before, if he hadn't have been a good coach, I would have figured it out. But yeah, he put me on, you know, the path, and slowly but surely we made really small, sustainable changes. So he obviously helped me with the physical side of things in terms of training and nutrition. And then he also helped me with mindset stuff. But I think a lot of that obviously has to come within yourself. Like you can always give people direction, but ultimately they need to take it upon themselves. You can take the horse to water, but you can't make it drink, sort of scenario. So I just started really, really tiny. I just made a point of, I guess, changing the way I thought about myself. So it become not about changing my body because I hate my body, but about making my body better because I love my body in that sort of sense. So it started from a journey of love and wanting to love myself more. And I guess that I would probably say that that's one of the biggest factors in my overall success, is that it's never been about changing myself because I hate the way I look or hate the way I am. It's just always like, I was saying to Sean last night in our check-in, it's like happy but never satisfied. So like I'm absolutely happy with the person that I am and my physical exterior, but there's always room for improvement. So I'm always happy sort of to improve. That sort of covers it very loosely. Sort of. There's obviously way more to it. It's been a good 3 years, I'm going to say.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I said that before. I think it's been like since like 2017. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I started with you in 2017. I'd already lost a little bit of weight myself, and then once I started with you, I think I lost another 40 or so kilos.
Yeah.
Something like that. But it really was just a snowball effect. So people are going to be watching this that are at all sorts of places in their journey. And I was looking down the barrel of 40 kilos before I was even considered normal weight. So it was super daunting. And I felt oftentimes like, I can't do this, like it's too much. It's so hard. I've got so far to go. But I just broke it down into little steps and chipped away at it. I had Sean there, obviously, egging me along, plus a supportive network of friends and family. And then it's just like, it was literally just a snowball effect. So, one thing turned into another, which turned into another. And then before I knew it, it was a huge sort of change. But I also, which I touched on before, worked really hard in terms of my own habits in my personal life, which I like to pass on to other people. So simple things, just structuring your own environment so that it works for you in a way that is conducive to your own goals is really important. So little things that you might not think are important become important, like one thing for me is making my bed, which sounds completely unrelated, but it's almost like the catalyst that sets the day up to success. So I know if I get up and I make my bed, that's sort of like the start of my routine and my habit for the day. And even 3 years ago, like most of my selfies that I've taken, like my before photos are in a room that's just like washing everywhere, like a mess. And that's to an extent mum life. And, sometimes you don't have time to fold your washing, but it sort of like shows the headspace I was in. Like I just didn't have time to do anything. So by putting myself first, I'm able to focus and prioritize things, and everybody else's needs get met because my own needs are met first and foremost. So you ask my kids and my husband, they all obviously have a way better, I guess, they fit way better within, my schedule, just simply because my needs are met first. Whereas before I thought that I was doing the right thing by putting everybody else first, but it kind of wasn't really working out. So,
and I think that's such a common thing. Like women think that completely all the time. It's like you don't have that time for yourself, and thinking that you're doing good by your kids and your partner and your family by doing that. Yet if you take the time and you respect yourself, it's a lot easier to treat others and respect them a lot better because you feel good. Not to say that you feel good before, but you're in a much better place physically, emotionally, energetically. So
100%,
yeah.
100%. You can't love anybody else until you love yourself first. And there's
I love what you said about that. Like it wasn't coming from a place of I'm doing this because I hate how I look. I'm doing this because I want to love myself even more. So that to me is a really powerful motivator, because I think a lot of people try and find that willpower to keep going, because it's always like they're moving away from that pain. Whereas when you're pulling yourself towards more self-love and more respect for yourself and more time, and it's a lot more positive to be able to create the habits and make the changes when you're coming from that space. Hey.
Yeah, 100%. It makes it more sustainable. So I think when people have that inner dialogue of, oh, I look so fat, I look so disgusting, they don't realize how much it actually impacts your day-to-day life, just those simple words. So I really, really changed that, like from the beginning, just really worked on not using that dialogue and making things more positive. So even in the beginning, I sort of had to fake it a little bit, because there wasn't a lot that I liked about myself. It was like I'd look at myself and I'd be like, oh, I like my hair and I like my eyes, which is a bit sad. And then as I went on, I was like, you know, found heaps more things. So then it became about, like, instead of looking at myself and being like, oh, this is disgusting, that's disgusting, my focus was on things that I genuinely liked, which made it a lot easier to, you know, pursue what I wanted to pursue, basically, because I felt like I deserved it. Whereas if you're constantly putting yourself down, you're sort of unintentionally telling yourself, you know, you're not worth this, this isn't for you. And I think that can be the undoing for a lot of women, especially, and men, but definitely women. For some reason we fall into that trap of negative self-talk all the time, sometimes in a joking way. It's almost like you might joke with, like, a lot of girls joke with their friends about it. It's a way, almost like a way of bonding, in a sense. Like you joke about, oh, you know, like, oh, my fat bum and I'm this and I'm that, but it actually has more impact than people think.
Yeah.
I can even relate to that to an extent of, like, if you're saying those sorts of things when you are at, like, your worst physique wise, you're still going to be saying them when you're at your best as well. It's like you're going to be picking apart your worst parts rather than recognizing your best parts about yourself. It's not going to change unless you change that before you start this whole journey. There's every chance where I've been the best shape of my life, but I never once looked at the best parts of me. It was like always the worst, and how like, that's a bad mindset to carry. You should, you know, like you said before, 100%. You should be wanting to improve, like, sort of still, you know, wanting to improve more, but, you know, recognizing how well you've done, and even if you only lost a few kilos, something, how far you've come there, and then you enjoy the journey in the process a lot more, and, you know.
100%. It's a really corny thing to say, and people say it all the time, but it really, like, the journey is, like, you really should take that journey and enjoy it, because if you can't and you're constantly wanting to get to the destination, you'll get there and you'll realize, like, okay, you know, you won't be happy. So if you're constantly thinking you'll be happy with something else, like, it's never going to work. So you've got to be happy with what you have first, before you can truly be happy with more. And like I said, sometimes you kind of have to fake it till you make it, but it's just like training. You've got to put in the reps. You've got to, like, keep practicing, and eventually it'll become second nature, and it won't be something so foreign. It'll just become just the way you feel. It just takes a little bit of practice, I think. I think we are all guilty of it as humans, like, not just in terms of our physique and health and fitness, but, you know, work, money, holidays. Like, I'll be happy when I go on holidays. I'll be happy when I make more money. I'll be happy when this. But the truth is, if happiness is always in the future, then you're never going to get there anyway. So it's the same with our physique endeavors and weight loss endeavors. You've just got to really focus on trying to actually accept what you have now, rather than hate it away.
Amen to that. That was inspiring. Yeah, because it's so true. You really have to be that person before you see it, because if you can't appreciate where you're at now, then you're never going to be able to. It's always going to be never good enough. I want more. It's the reality now is not where you want it to be. So that's so cool. Yeah.
Like I was saying before, happy but never satisfied is different to, I hate the way I am, I have to change. Like, it seems like it's very similar, but it's actually quite different. It's
energetically, it's so different. Hey.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's so cool. So Sean mentioned that, like, obviously before you started with him, like, you were trying some, you know, diets and things like that. You kind of went on that whole, I guess, tangent of trying different things, like what was your experience with all of that, and where did that kind of lead you in terms of the results that you had and able to keep?
Yeah, so I came from probably a position where most people, and especially women, come from, trying to find the absolute best diet that could possibly, get me to lose weight really quickly. And despite coming from an evidence-based healthcare background, you'd be surprised how you can fall for things and be like, well, that sounds legitimate, so I'm going to go with that. So I've done everything you can possibly imagine. I did spend around about 5 years being a vegetarian, just vegetarian vegan for ethical reasons. And it sounds pretty bad that I then became a meat eater again, but I was trying to find a solution that would be long-term in terms of my health and my weight and the way I felt about myself. So transition back to eating meat, but I've literally tried everything. So including vegetarianism, I've tried to be keto, I've tried just general low carb, high fat. What other diets are there? Paleo, cutting out certain things, cutting out sugar, replacing it with honey. Go figure.
I'm ticking all those boxes as you're rattling them off. I'm like, yep, I've done that too. Yep, that's been me.
Yes,
and I think it's such a similar story. Like it's we've all done it. Majority of us have done it. So yeah. On a quest to find, the best possible way, to get to. My kids are knocking on the door. The best possible way to get to. And it wasn't even a physique thing back then. It was like, I just want to lose a little bit of weight sort of thing. So it was the most extreme measures, and often the most extreme measures are not sustainable. So I would lose some weight and then it would come back on and then more so, and I'd never know how to maintain it. So it's almost like I was never learning anything, and because a couple of times those diets were given to me by like coaches or PTs, and then it would be like, I kind of need them forever sort of thing. So it was never a sustainable way to lose weight ever. It puts you in a cycle where you kind of begin to think it's you. You're like, oh, well, maybe I can just, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I can just never lose weight. Maybe I'm not trying hard enough. Maybe I'm not motivated enough. And a lot of the times, which is sad, but a few fitness professionals that I had been a client of would tell me that, like, you just don't want it enough sort of thing. And I think that's sad, because it does happen to a lot of women, I think, especially when you're busy and you've got kids and you work and that sort of thing, and trying to find something that fits in with your life is really important. So that could mean different things for different people. Not all ways of eating are going to work for everybody sort of thing. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And there's no set one thing that is going to be a blanket approach that will suit everybody, will get the same result for everybody. So when did you, because you said that you obviously were very thorough with, doing research and things like that with what Sean was giving. And I get why, like when you've done things with people in the past, like coaches or other professionals, and it's not worked, like I can really understand why you do go, okay, well, I need to look into this and why I'm doing this. So what was the thing that made you realize, like when you started working with Sean, like, okay, this could be the thing that is going to work for me, like coming from a place of not believing that it was possible for you? Like, what was the moment that you went, yeah, this is what I'm going to do?
I actually think I had that moment before I started with Sean. And I've spoken about it before, but I almost, like, I knew that this was going to be the time. Like, my head had already gotten there. And I think I said to Sean in our first consultation, I'm like, I'm comfortable with it being 2 years of, this before I get to anywhere where, like, I'm a healthy weight. Like, I'm comfortable with that. Like, I'm not looking for short-term success. So my head had already gotten there.
I love that, because a lot of women have those realistic expectations sometimes, and it can really set them up for disappointment and feeling like they've failed or they're not achieved their goal. But when you see it as a long-term focus and
in a way that's, like you said, sustainable, and this is not just a short term, I just want to lose a bit of weight. Like, that's such a massive shift too, when you can have that time frame and extend it and be okay with it taking that long, hey? Because not a lot of women have the patience to do that. It's like, I'm not happy now, so I want the change. Whereas that's the difference with your mindset of going, well, I am happy, but you know, this is just my journey now, and it's okay for it to take the time that it takes.
Yeah, 100%. That's it.
For most people who want to lose like a large amount of weight, and they're like, they realize that they're suffering within the space of like the first, I don't know, month or two of them doing like a big journey like that. They know that they're going through the wrong thing. They know they're not, you know, heading in the right direction straight away. So that's where you can normally sort of pinpoint it. And that's where, even where like I start working with someone and they're like, oh, you know, I don't know, I'm absolutely starving, or like anything like that. And we know that we're sitting too low. The calories are too low normally. So we need to bump them up, and then people are too scared to bump up. So then we're like, you know, what do you want me to do in that situation? So that's it. It's looking at it as a long-term sort of process there, and being able to like go, okay, well, you know, this is where we need to get you to. We need to get you to a healthier place first, mentally, and, you know, through fitness and through calories, through food and everything as well. And then start to look at, okay, cool. So let's start your journey now. But like you've been talking about this whole entire time, like that's what we needed to do. And you luckily were there already, like, or sort of there already, in terms mentally. And then with obviously you doing all the research and stuff too and everything as well, and actually sort of like backing up everything that I've said, it just made the whole process so much easier. And I just wish more people would do it. Like, it's crazy to say that I'm saying, hey, please back up everything that I'm saying, but like, you know, I'm that confident in what we are doing and what I'm saying, that I'm saying, go ahead, you back it up, so you are 100% sure that this is the right thing.
That's it. I think it's important for people to understand that, you know, like, it's okay to question things. Like, if someone says something to you, you should be saying, okay, what's the rationale behind that? And then if that person doesn't know or isn't willing to find out, you maybe need to look at getting another coach, perhaps. I think it's important that, like, obviously you're there to direct my journey based on my goals, but ultimately I'm, I guess, driving the ship. So you're going to tell me what to do, to put in the coordinates, and then I'm going to get myself there, sort of thing. So I need to trust you, and that was it from the get-go. Like, just the way you spoke, I already trusted you anyway, and then it was just in my nature to sort of research and back stuff up to, you know, confirm what you were saying. And then it just became sort of something I liked to do anyway. I'm like, okay, well, I actually like, you know, researching this sort of stuff, and it became sort of interesting, and a path that I wanted to go down in terms of career direction. So I think, it was sort of in the beginning, I think, just because it was just like, I think I had 40 kilos to lose before I was like of normal weight, from memory. And I remember starting with you and just feeling like super comfortable and being like, okay, this, like, you didn't make me feel like, you know, like there was anything wrong with me. I just felt comfortable, and you just sort of supported me the whole way through. And if I had a question, you were really like honest and direct. And if I, you know, messed up or whatever, it was just, I don't know, like I just sort of felt like I could just do what you told me, and it was easy. It wasn't like you're asking me to do outrageous stuff. Like, it was all manageable within my life of being a mum with 2 young kids and a wife. I didn't feel ever like I was, you know what I mean? So obviously now, you know, like, training is really important to me, and I do that as a hobby. But in the beginning, it wasn't like that. You know what I mean? Like, Sean wasn't like prescribing me stuff that was outrageous. I've just grown to be like that. So I've just gone down that path.
When people have, like, you know, when people sort of do something pretty extreme and then they come to me and then they're like, same like with both of us, Ed, where they're like, sort of, they're doing something and it's pretty easy what they're doing, because like, we're asking them to eat more food and we're asking them to only train, you know, as much as they actually can possibly fit in comfortably. And they're like, sort of, and then some people question, it's like, so I don't feel like this is hard enough, like, more. And then you go, well, like, is it necessary? Can you 100% fit it in, and can you commit to this for a long period of time? It's like, just because you want to lose 10 kilos doesn't mean we need to do it in the space of 5 weeks, to the point where it's almost unachievable to do that in that amount of time. Like, let's just look back a little bit, enjoy the process. Like, why not go out and have food with your friends? And if you want to have the odd few drinks here and there, or be more social and stuff too, where if you go too hard, too fast, you're going to crash and burn, and you're not going to be able to do all those things. Or like,
hate the process and get resentful of the fact that you're giving up your life and missing out on your kids' lives and social lives and everything else for the sake of, now I'm just, you know, doing it because I have to lose weight. That's a totally different mindset. Hey.
Yeah, the best diet is one that you can take, you know, take the framework of and use it forever. If you can't see yourself, you know, adopting those principles and using them in your life forever, then it's probably not something for you, and you maybe need to pull back a bit. And I think that's sort of where, unfortunately, social media is a negative in this sense. Like, social media is great, I think, for people, you know, in terms of getting relatively easy information. It's unfortunate that sometimes the information isn't correct, but usually people end up stumbling upon the correct information eventually. But I think oftentimes people that have a lot of weight to lose can fall into the trap of thinking like the bodybuilding lifestyle is some sort of cure for obesity. And that's what I was trying to touch on, is that although now I definitely wouldn't call myself a bodybuilder because it's not something I do for sport. I think it's something I do as a hobby, but I think people tend to look at people on social media and be like, okay, well, that's what I need to do in order to lose weight. And it's like, it's not quite right. Like, sure, if you get into it and you love doing it, that's great. But I don't think, you know, training 6 days a week and doing, you know, these crazy bro splits and going in and, you know, training triceps and back for 3 hours. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's where social media sort of falls down, is people get pushed into kind of the wrong direction because they want to look like their favorite influencer, but it's like, you got to work up to that. So I think in the beginning, what's sustainable for somebody, it needs to be sustainable, and then that potentially grows. Like, what was sustainable for me in the beginning is a lot less than what I do now, but I didn't just go all out to start with. It was like little baby steps, and I built on it, and then it became just a normal part of my life.
Yeah, that's it. You don't just go from this to that overnight and just without any resistance, or, you know, it just, but and there will be ups and downs in the journey too. Like you said, there might be times where you have slip ups and things happen, but it's
injuries,
exactly. Kids get sick, you know, things that are totally out of your control. And I think that's where women can struggle, is like, oh, well, I haven't been perfect this week, and maybe I haven't eaten the best, or maybe I've not trained. That's not a failure. That's just life, and that happens. And it's how you deal with those times and those things that make a difference. Hey, because, you know, I could imagine that you had lots of things going on with kids and family and whatever else. But at no point definitely. Did you probably think, well, I'm going to stop because of, you know, I've had a bad week or two.
Yeah, well, like, there'd be honestly can't think. I think when you think back on something, you sort of have a little bit of rose-coloured spectacles, but I feel like I never had that. Like, I honestly feel like my head was already there. It's just like going through the motions and putting, you know, passing the time. But there was definitely times when I was like, this is really hard, and I'm struggling. But I just had built up such a habit. Like, by the time I got to that point where I was like, wow, this is hard, it had become such a habit that there was no alternative to stop. And the reason it had become such a habit is because it was easy and sustainable. I don't mean easy in the sense that, you know, I wasn't working hard. I mean, it was easy to fit in my lifestyle, and it was sustainable. So that's why it became manageable, and why I was like, okay, everyone has bad days, but I'm going to keep on keeping on.
That's awesome.
Even now, like, everyone has bad days. Everyone misses a session. Everyone overeats their calories. Everybody, you know, feels crappy. It's just the nature of it. But I always, because I'm an eternal optimist, always take that as room for improvement. I'm like, okay, well, that just means, you know, when I do feel good, it'll be extra great, because I know, you know, yesterday I didn't feel so good. So it just means there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, and that's such a good and different mindset to have too, as opposed to I screwed up. Yeah, that's
it, which gives me an opportunity to do better. So it's like the way you learn is by making mistakes. So if you never make a mistake, you'll never grow and you'll never learn. So sometimes you have to do, make little mistakes along the way. And if that mistake is, overeating or missing training, it's not really a mistake, but you can kind of, I guess, in a roundabout way, chalk it up to a mistake, move on, learn from it. And life goes on. So you don't have that attitude and you get stuck on the small stuff. I think it just becomes all too much. And you miss, the important things. I think people get caught up on being perfect and then miss the consistency, which is the important thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you spoke about the path, like at the start, you sort of said Sean had put you on the path. Just explain that a little bit in terms of the actual process, because obviously, Sean talked before a little bit about increasing calories and trying to convince women that it's okay to eat more food, particularly when we're trying to lose weight. We think we've got to lose the calories and everything else that comes with that. So the actual process in terms of the food and the training, like what would you sort of say was the path now that you feel like is that sustainable approach that you can just continue on with forever?
Yeah, so I think I was in a really sort of ideal position when I went to Sean, because I was like honest and laid everything on the table. I was like, dude, I binge eat all the time. I easily eat 3,000 or 4,000 calories. Like, I was honest. I knew that the reason I was very overweight is because I was eating a lot of food. I was also exclusively breastfeeding my baby. So that meant that my energy expenditure was quite naturally high just purely from breastfeeding. So I just brought as much info to him as I possibly could. And I think we started on, was it 2,700 calories, Sean? Something like that.
Yeah, it was closer to 3,000, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that really put me on a really, really good track, because I had such a high calorie point to drop from. Like, going from, so when I started with Sean, I was around about the 120 kilo mark or something like that, maybe 115, 120. So obviously had a fair bit of weight to lose from when I started with him. And if I had have started with him on, 1,500 calories or whatever, people end up coming to coaches with, then it would have been a really, really, really big struggle to build them up and then drop back down again. So luckily, I was in a good position there, and I didn't have to sort of build my calories back up. And from the get-go, I don't think he had much trouble convincing me that I needed to eat, because that's another thing is I think women get caught up in, they have to pretend like they don't eat much, like, oh no, I couldn't eat that. And it's like, I'll have it if you're not eating it. So I kind of am comfortable with that. I like the idea of breaking that stereotype of women shouldn't be big eaters. So I was kind of really happy. I'm like, sweet, this is good. So that became sustainable for me, because it wasn't tricky, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, okay, well, if I work on cutting out the binging, then that's going to really dramatically, obviously, reduce my calories. So I worked on that sort of stuff, in terms of a little bit of like cognitive behavioral therapy, and just moving on with that separately to coaching. But yeah, it was just not that hard. And I say that again, like, it wasn't a lot of work, because it was, but it wasn't hard in terms of restricting. So Sean taught me to practice restraint and not restriction. So it wasn't like, you can't have this, you can't have this, you can't have that, whatever. It was like, Rach, you can have all that stuff, but you need to know where it fits within your goals, and you need to sort of know what happens to your performance, to your sleep, all that sort of stuff that matters. So I never felt as though I was restricted in any way. I felt as though if I wanted to have something, I could, which dramatically helped in stopping binge eating. And I would say that I'm completely recovered from the clinical term binge eating. But I definitely still overeat from time to time. However, the way I see that has completely changed. So I used to feel bad for overeating and think, oh, like I feel so guilty and there's something wrong with me. But now I'm like, that's just a human thing. Sometimes we have an impulse to have a full tummy before we go to bed, and then that's just is what it is. So I think once you come to terms with that and you can move on from it, that it becomes less and less. You sort of take away that urge just simply because you're not giving it so much energy. So
probably
yeah,
too then when you're balancing your macros and your body is getting everything that you need, because probably when you're eating those 3,000 plus calories, it was probably not, you're not getting your right amount of protein, your right amount of carbs.
Yeah. There was it wasn't like it was 3,000 or 4,000 calories worth of fats and carbs, very little protein. Like I would have been getting protein as a byproduct of just whatever, I guess like fried food I was eating in terms of like burgers and that sort of thing. But yeah, it wasn't a focus. So yeah, there was nothing like, it was hot, like highly palatable, satiating food in the sense that it was like delicious, but it wasn't satiating and nutritious. So it was, yeah, definitely, I was malnourished in the sense that even though I was eating a lot of food, it wasn't carefully calculated or anything like that. So
yeah, that's really interesting. Hey,
yeah,
and that's really Sean's expertise, isn't it? Like he's so good at really understanding the nutrition aspect of it, and obviously the training as well. And I can really understand why you would really want to get into that, because I think once you do start learning all this about food, that often when you just like following a diet of, just go keto and cut your carbs, or just cut sugar and eat honey instead, you're not really essentially learning anything, are you? And I think the learning aspect of it does become really important, because to me that's the part that's going to see you be able to continue on with this for long term. Hey,
that's it, exactly. Like I think Sean's approach is, like he gives you all the tools so that you don't need to stay with him, but he makes it really hard to leave. So he's just the type of person that he is. Like he's just a great coach and all round great person. And so it's not like you feel, it's like if I was just a person that wanted to lose a little bit of weight and I did that, I potentially would have moved on, but I just loved it so much that now, I guess he's stuck with me forever, just purely because I enjoy like being coached. I enjoy the accountability, and I like learning from him. And so I think that's important to have that like relationship with someone where you feel you can trust them and you sort of feel there's like a friend element to it as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then you also get that tough love when you need it too. Like you can come from that place of, hey, this is, what I'm struggling with. And when it's just a friend or someone like that who's quite empathetic, it can be very different to your coach going, okay, hey, I understand, but these are your goals. I know this is what you want to achieve. So you've got that very neutral, I guess, relationship with a coach as well, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's great. So in total, like how much weight had you lost? So you said it was about 40 kilos to get to your healthy weight range.
Yeah.
So where are you sitting now in terms of weight? Because I really want to talk to you about that just quickly too, is that relationship with the scales, and if that's something that along your journey, something that you struggled with, because I know a lot of ladies that come into the program, that is a struggle. It's like, they don't see that the scale weight move in a way that they think it should, or the way that they've kind of convinced themselves that it perhaps should be or could be, and it really messes with their head, and it really takes that it could be like, I'm feeling really motivated, and you get on the scales after you check in and it hasn't changed or it's not moved as much as you want, and that can be quite deflating and demotivating. Hey.
Yeah, 100%. So when I had my second child, I think a few weeks after he was born, I was around about the 127, 130 kilo mark, roughly. And now I sit at 75, well, I'm about 73, 74 kilos, 75 to round it off. That seems to be like my comfortable weight where I sit regardless of like up and down sort of thing. So I've just finished a bit of a diet, but I'm 73.8, but yeah, like it just seems to fluctuate around there. So
when you say a diet, obviously you've just adjusted your macros and calories. Hey, that's when you say that dieting mentality, or that I wanted to I guess separate that from a diet in terms of what we would see as a diet.
Correct. So I went from sort of maintenance / surplus calories, and we created a calorie deficit just to manipulate some body fat and just get me into a bit more of a comfortable feeling, basically. And again, it wasn't because I hated the way I looked. It was just because I feel a bit more comfortable leaner, which a lot of people do. And we did it successfully. Didn't interrupt my relationship with food. Didn't get super low calories. I think the lowest I got was just under 1,900 calories, Sean, from 2,800.
With 1 high calorie day, which averaged out around that 2,000 calorie mark.
So also, you say I didn't get below 2,000 calories. And that was 6 months, just really slow, just chipping away, a bit of a break in between, sort of thing. But in answer to the original question, so that means just over 50 kilos, so 53 kilos roughly. And honestly, for the most part, the scale, it was just like, because it seemed to, like, it trended down pretty quickly. And then I had obviously periods where it would fluctuate. But it didn't bother me all the time, but there's definitely times. I think people will be lying if they're like, oh no, never, I just see it as data. It's like, no, like humans, you see something even though you've worked really hard and you're like, really? But it might only be for a brief moment, and then it'll be like, okay, well, let's assess what's going on, because obviously the scale is only one piece of a puzzle and it can't tell you the entire puzzle that you're trying to look at. So having, like, when you know that, it sort of makes things easier, like you can assess, okay, well, are my measurements changing? Are my clothes fitting better? Do I look better in the mirror? Am I sleeping better? Am I training better? All that sort of thing comes into play. So I think from the get-go, Sean sort of instilled that in me, that, we want the scale to trend down, but it's not going to constantly trend down, and there's going to be fluctuations. So there are periods of time though where I'll say to Sean, oh, I'm not weighing myself this week, because I'm very mindful if it does start to affect me in terms of, if I get up and I'm in a great mood, which most people are lucky enough to wake up in a great mood, well, I hope they are, and I step on the scale and then I become unhappy, I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't good. So I need to reassess this and just, pop off them for a while. It doesn't happen very often. But when it does, I just step back, like literally step off them and just put them up for a while. But for the most part, lucky enough that I can just see it as data and be like, okay, cool. And then I usually know why it's spiking, why it's increased. And that's just a byproduct of tracking and tracking my weight for so long. Like, you know when it's going to happen. If you've had a bad night's sleep, if you've eaten late the night before, like, it's, it doesn't have a huge, it doesn't have a lot to do with my mindset around things anymore. But definitely in the past, before starting with Sean, it'd be like, I had this goal in mind, and I even think I might have told Sean when I came to him that I want to get to 65 kilos. And it's like 65 kilos, I was probably, I don't know, 15 or 16. It's like, it's not a possible weight. So we all have this goal weight that we hang on to, which is an arbitrary number that potentially your body, like, physically can't get to anymore. So, yeah, that's
such a good analogy, like, in terms of when you know that the relationship with scales isn't the best, like, you've got that knowledge and that wisdom now to go, okay, like, put them away. It's affects, how I'm doing things and how I'm going about my day. So that's good. And at what point, I guess, did you look at the transition from weight loss to like muscle gain, building your physique, because to look at you now, like your body is just rocking, like you're toned, like you look strong, you obviously can lift, you know, quite heavy. So there was obviously a transition period too, like even though you're probably doing weight training for a lot of the time, at what point did you go, like I'm really starting to notice it's not so much more about the weight loss as such, it's the body recomposition and the changes within my physique rather than the weight on the scale?
Yeah, honestly, probably it's not been that long. So, because I definitely still consider myself like, sorry?
I was going to touch on that before with you. We went through like a big period where initially we lost all that weight. You got down to honestly like a close-ish weight to where you are now.
Yeah.
And then we spent a big chunk of time, like
a long time.
Yeah, we dieted like here and there for a few weeks and that, but majority of the time we spent like, you know, in a bit of like, or around that maintenance calories for you, lifting sort of quite heavy or quite frequently as well too, and enjoying your training. And yeah, it was only till recently where we actually pulled another chunk of weight off our body fat. Got to
100%. Yeah.
So like, we spent a good chunk of the time that we worked together 3 years just eating and maintenance and enjoying your training and getting to an even better spot mentally. So,
100%.
And your body composition changed from now to when you lost that weight initially, from then to now is really crazy.
100%. So you're right. I'm sitting around about the same weight as I was when we initially stopped dieting. So I think it took 11 months or something to lose that weight, and I was around about the 74 kilo mark. And we made the decision to start a reverse diet, knowing that one day we'll go back and sort of finish what I started. I sort of wasn't finished in the sense that I was like, again, I was happy, but I wasn't satisfied. So we made the decision, and that was based upon I felt like my relationship with food was just starting to suffer at that point. And so you were like, yep, sweet, let's build your calories up. We'll go through a reverse diet and just, you know, focus on performance goals. So eating at maintenance and having that time in a surplus is what I credit to having the physique I have. And again, I'm happy with my physique. I'm not satisfied. I want to constantly improve and constantly, you know, better myself. But if we didn't spend that time, you know, really working hard on building my calories up and having, you know, good foundations with my lifts and really focusing on technique and really focusing on building muscle, then I wouldn't have the physique I have. Like if I was constantly dieting and trying to make myself smaller, I wouldn't look like I look like, and I'd have a bad relationship with food and a bad relationship with my body. So I really think we made the right decision to stop then and build calories back up. Yeah, so I've done maybe like two mini cuts in that time. So 11 months of the original diet to get the weight off, and then I guess you could say like 18 months at maintenance with a couple of mini cuts in there just to manipulate body composition. And then we've just done a 6-month cut. And so obviously if you compare the way I looked when I weighed 74 kilos after losing that initial amount of weight, I don't look the same. And that's why it's important to know that body composition and the scale is a funny relationship, and you really have to understand that lean mass and the way it makes you look is, you know, is going to make you heavier on the scale, but it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, it's funny. Like I often say to people, hey, if you like had your ideal body and you know, had the exact shape that you wanted, but you didn't have your ideal weight, would you care? And it's funny, most people say, no, I'd rather have my ideal body. But then some people are like, no, I'd rather have my ideal weight. So it's a really it's a mental game, I think, with some people, this whole weight on the scale thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's really different, like you said, when you are at a certain weight with lean muscle and lean, than at that weight without that lean muscle, but you're actually skinnier, you know, and your body is probably not as strong, not as strong metabolically as well, where you can handle that high level of calories and burn more calories than the rest. So that's really ultimately
Exactly.
And that's why I love, you know, what Sean does and what we do, and that's the big focus. You know, that's the important part. So, so just quickly before we wrap up, I guess, you know, when you sort of said at the start, when you started, and the big reason why you wanted to go on this journey and make a change and lose the weight, a lot of it was around your kids and how you felt and what you were sort of doing. How's that changed, or what does that look like now for you in terms of, you know, being able to be active with your kids and just, I guess, the way that it's changed your relationship, like you mentioned that before, with your kids and with your partner as well.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about that.
So I actually feel like I have, so like I was saying in the beginning, the fact that I put myself first, I actually feel like I am more like focused and able to manage tasks more easily and therefore have more free time, because I've got that focus. So I've got more free time to spend with the kids. So it's helped in the sense that, it's almost like I'm more time efficient now because I can be more focused, because, you know, I'm fueling myself right and I'm training and just treating my body correctly. So now I guess the kids, like it's easy to run around with them, it's easy to do stuff with them, and most of our activities are based around doing active things. But, you know, we'll still sit down or go to the movies or, you know, have like a movie night or whatever. It's not like we're always just doing active stuff, but definitely before it'd be like all just sitting around, like it'd be everything based around like, let's eat food, let's order takeaway, let's, you know, that's all it would sort of be that. But now it's more like just based around going, like doing fun stuff with them outdoors, just simple things like taking them for like a scavenger hunt somewhere and finding things, like stuff that I wouldn't have done before just because I would have been too tired and too sore and too cranky, even though like I felt like I was doing everything for them and making them a priority. They really weren't, like because I didn't have the energy. So yeah, it really does pay off. And I think there's a certain amount of guilt that mothers feel when they feel like they're not putting their kids first, but yeah, I think a lot of the time they're doing themselves and their children a disservice by putting themselves last, because children then see that as well.
They absolutely do.
Yeah, whether they're consciously aware of it or not, they're definitely subconsciously aware of it, and then it sort of forms, I guess, their opinion on how you should treat yourself. So it can start a bit of a chain event of, you know, like low self-esteem for your children and that sort of thing. So yeah, I guess it's beneficial, obviously, in so many ways when you really do put your health as a priority.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love it. So Sean, is there anything else that you want to mention or touch on before we go?
No, she's done really well in covering almost everything that I would have. So no, yeah.
And quickly too, I was worried that you'd have to play some sort of music and be like.
No, I just think it is just inspiring to see, like, not many, like I said, I don't think I've seen a transformation as big as yours in terms of the time commitment, the energy commitment, and just the belief in yourself that you actually can do it. Because I think sometimes women can just, you know, they might start something and then it does become hard, it does become difficult, and they can give themselves the limitation of, well, this is just how I am, this is just how I will always be. But we have the choice to never settle. Like, we can settle with what we think is our limit, or we can really push past those limits and go, this is not what I'm willing to settle for myself, for my life, for my kids' lives. And I just love how you've managed to do that, and, you know, being able to push through it and get to where you are now. So
100%. It's just small steps, basically. So not going out all guns blazing in the beginning, which I think is the mistake we all make, you know, when we embark on those health journeys is like, okay, we have to overhaul everything, but that's never going to last. So even if you're overhauling one thing each week, then, you know, it's going to make a massive
difference. Because a lot of women will come into the program and they'll be like, oh, you know, they'll do their first weekly check-in and they're like, oh, I ate really well, but I didn't get my workouts in. It's like, that's okay. Like, get your food down pat first. That's the most important. And you get into that rhythm and you get into that routine of prepping and cooking and getting that sorted. Yeah. If it takes you, 2 or 3 weeks to then step into the training and get that started, like that's how it becomes, like you said, those small changes. So that's why I'm always like a big believer in, you make manageable changes that you feel comfortable with. Otherwise, you will find that you'll get that overwhelm. You'll get to that point where it's like it's all too much and it's too hard and you give up.
Exactly. And that's what will happen. If anything's too hard in life, you're like, do you know what? I can't do it. Like, not just with health and fitness. So that's why it needs to be, it's not enough to want it, because it's, like everybody wants it. Do you know what I mean? Like, who doesn't want to be fit and healthy and feel good and look good? And if that was enough, then everybody would do it. But you've got to be able to have steps in place to make it achievable and manageable. And if it's not manageable, then you're not going to be able to do it. So finding those baby steps, and then they all add up and become big giant steps eventually.
They really do. Yeah. And I love it how, because sometimes women can look at other women and go, oh, well, you don't understand because, you don't have kids or you don't work or, but you're just like living proof that it can be done. Like, if I always am a big believer, if someone else has done it, like, that gives you permission to go, well, I can do that too, because if someone else has done it, then there's no reason that without, if you give the persistence and the commitment to it, that you can't get there as well. So I just love that, you've been able to share your story, and it just gives other women hope that, if someone else can do it, you can totally do it too. So thank you. That's awesome.
100%.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Yeah, that's like the whole reason I started documenting everything, is just, for the me in the past that was really like, stuck in that mindset of, I can't do this, it's never going to work, and hope that even if just one person's inspired by it, then, it's all worth it. So
totally. Yeah. And I just want to say thanks to Sean too, because you really are an awesome coach, and, just the way that you impact obviously women, obviously you work with men as well, but the women in our program, like, they just love you, and exactly probably the same reason, Rach, like, he's such a great tool of, well, I shouldn't say tool, he's not a tool, he's a great source of knowledge, and there's never anything that's too much of an ask or, too big of a question. And I think that's why people do appreciate you so much, Sean, is because you're willing to take the time to actually explain stuff rather than just go, this is what you need to do. Because sometimes
just do it because I said.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because I'm exactly like that. I need to understand, well, why am I doing that? Because if I don't understand why, then it's a lot harder for me to go, all right, I'm just going to do that blindly. Whereas if I understand, I'm like, okay, cool, I can see the reasoning behind that. So, and to me, that's learning as well, to be able to take that with you, not be just like, I'm just going to follow this blindly just because someone said so, which I find is a lot of what those diets are. It's a lot of what those, programs that you can just go and download. It's like, here you go, just go do this. And it's like,
it's smoke and mirrors. It's avoiding what the actual, once you realise, start to realise about energy balance and that sort of thing, it's like, okay, obviously, there's more to weight loss than energy balance. Otherwise, we would have solved obesity by now. But when you realise that fat loss is actually simple, doesn't mean it's easy, but it's actually simple, it just makes things, it's just enlightening. You're kind of like, okay, all right, well, it just makes it much more achievable, I think, once you realise that, it's not as extravagant and complicated as some people have you believe.
That's exactly it. And it's empowering to get in and train and be strong and do all that stuff too, isn't it? Like that's, that's
100%. Yeah, it's definitely changed my outlook on life. 100%. Like, we've just started a strength block at the moment, and I'm really excited to just be able to, you know, build some strength and get strong and use, you know, all the extra food that I've got now on putting it towards performance goals. So just sort of shifting that attention from the way I look to now the way I perform. I think that's important as well, and that's another good attribute about Sean, is he's really good at keeping you in check with that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Sure. But yeah, just he obviously genuinely cares about people. Like, it's more than just a job, and you can tell when those people, like when coaches just genuinely care about you. He does spend time, and he goes over and above.
Yeah.
That's it. We want people to ask questions, and I want people to I suppose, let me know how they're going in with certain things, because you'll notice when I'm even making a training program for someone, I'm like, okay, cool. Well, what do you want? You know, what do you enjoy? What do you like doing? You know, and it's the people who sort of don't, you know, like ask questions and that too, they're the ones that are going to struggle the most, because it's like, you know, they're used to getting that information initially, and it's like, okay, cool, go off by yourself and see how you go. It's like, no.
Yeah.
You know,
and then you just assume that they don't have any questions.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. I would expect most people to be asking me questions on a weekly basis, and that's fine. You know, we want that, and that's what we want out of everyone, is to like sort of, you know, get as much information as we can, you know, from you, so we can like make the training and the diet and everything so suited to the individual. That's what this is all about. You hear it all the time. Yeah, you hear it all the time, but there's a lot of plans out there that say they're individualized, but they're not at all.
Yeah, exactly. And training's like nutrition, in the sense that if you can't enjoy it and you hate it, it's not going to work, because you're not going to be able to stick to it. So even the best training plan in the world isn't going to work for you if you can't stick to it. If you can't enjoy it and you can't adhere to it, it's not going to work.
Exactly. So, yeah. Spot
on. That's suitable to you. Just because, you know, like your favorite influencer's doing it doesn't mean that it's suitable for you if you can't actually do it and adhere to it.
And there's got to be, like, you know, like you said before, the evidence-based stuff. You know, you do see a lot of, you know, the booty band, you know, stuff that, you know, just do this workout and you'll look like this. It's like, well, that person's not doing that. That's not how they're getting to look like that. Like you said before, there's so much smoke and mirrors that it's just all like this fake, false reality of what actually is going on behind the scenes. And that's what I really love, to just break that idea of what is actually true and what is actually real, as opposed to that's just what you see on social media, which
that's it.
Yeah,
it's a shame, because, you know, like, people need to realize that a lot of the reasons that, you know, these big influencers look the way they do is that they have really good genetics, for one, and for two, you know, like, they've probably trained for a long time to look the way they do, and then they're promoting these, you know, workouts, or they're putting them on their Instagram page or Facebook page or whatever, purely for engagement, because they know that's what people want to see, even though that's not how they train. And then people think that's how they train, and then it's just it's not fair, but unfortunately it's the way social media works. Everybody wants.
Exactly. It's like you give people what they want to see, and that's, you know, and I get that.
Most of them are them as well, are also 100% committed to the fitness lifestyle as well, where 99.9% of us like aren't. Like, I absolutely love my fitness, and I love training, I love dieting and everything, but I can definitely tell you now that I'm not 100%. I haven't tracked every single day for 5 years straight. I haven't got every single one of my sessions. That too. Honestly, most of them people are. They'd almost rather die than miss a training session. Or
I think that's an important difference to note. Like, again, going back to the bodybuilding lifestyle isn't a cure for obesity. So I think it's really important for people to know, you know, like, a general population person that's just looking for fat loss, who doesn't live and breathe fitness, shouldn't be looking to track their food every day for the rest of their life. Like, the idea of using it as a learning tool, just like when you learn to drive a car and you got some driving lessons, you don't sit with the driving instructor in your car forever. You know, like, you get the tools and you use them and you move on, and it becomes something that you can draw on in the future. But the people that live and breathe fitness, like Sean was saying, aren't necessarily somebody that we should be looking on to take advice from, because it's like, well, you know, they probably do it for a living, they make their money from it, so it's not quite the same reality as the rest of us have.
Yeah, and I guess that's why I, as a coach, find it really difficult to be in the social media game, because, like, you know, today I'm like, I've got to go to the gym. I've got 3 kids. I've got to get in and out in 45 minutes. I don't have time to be taking photos and taking videos and doing all that shit. Like, I don't want to put I forgot to put, like, my long pants on. I had my old house shorts. So I'm like, shit, now I've got to hold my pants because I'm trying to do, like, leg press and my undies hanging out, you know, like, that's my training session. And the general population, like you said, that's what they're doing, you know. So
exactly. And it doesn't sell on social media.
No, that's it. Yeah, exactly. So, and that's why I guess, I don't know, you just see people jump from one thing to the next as well, because it's like, well, you know, if you had that person and it wasn't just their program, and you had their full support and their undivided attention, and you could ask questions and you could use them to learn from, like, that would be different. But a lot of the times you don't have that either. So that's why, you know, love what Sean does, you know, love what we do in our coaching program, because you do have that support. And I think that's so important, because it's
100%. It's half the battle, having
it
someone
really is,
able to and to learn from, to set you on the right path, because then you don't need to fall for those programs and those bad diets and those booty band, jump squat, whatever program that people are putting out. You know, there's obviously room for booty bands. They have their place, but I think,
hour session.
that's it.
And not the when that's just all you're doing. Like, totally love the booty bands, but probably not in the way that most people think that they'll use when we're seeing them in the pretty pictures and pretty videos.
Exactly.
No, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate you sharing your story. And I know that this is going to help a lot of women, and a lot of women are going to relate to this as well. So
you're so welcome. I'm happy to help, happy to chat anytime. Ask Sean.
Yes, you are.
5 to 10 minutes between sets is too long, isn't it?
Might be all right now. You got your strength phase. You might have a little bit longer rest time.
That's it. Exactly. I can make it work.
That's awesome. Well, thank you too, Sean. I always love our chats. Loving our catch-ups. And, I just want to say thank you too, because you're an amazing coach. Love having you part of our program and helping all the women that you do. I think it's great that you really do take the time and you actually care about women getting results, which is great.
Oh,
he does.
Yeah. No, I love working with you as well. It's awesome doing these, and we'll continue doing them.
Definitely.